Welcome back. And so today is World Diabetes Day, a day set aside to raise awareness on the chronic metabolic illness and how to advance the cause of access and affordable treatment and care for sufferers of that disease, diabetes. And joining us to have this discussion on the program is Dr. Ejiofor Ugu. He is the president, National President, Diabetes Association of Nigeria. Dr. Ugu, thank you so much for joining us amid so many challenges on your way today. Thank you very much. We do appreciate it.
Good morning. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
Yes, it's an honor to have you too. Let's start with the theme for this year's celebration, which is breaking barriers and bridging gaps to lower the risks and ensure there is affordable and accessible treatment to all. How does that resonate with the community of patients suffering from diabetes, and how can it be deployed to further the cause of providing increased access and affordable care and treatment for patients?
All right, thank you very much. Just like you rightly pointed out, today is World Diabetes Day. This is a day set aside by the United Nations.
Oh dear, we have network challenges through to Dr. Ugu, but we hope that that can be resolved as soon as possible.
This team that's talking about bridging the gaps, our patient-centered team that the International Diabetes Federation has ever brought out in the course of celebrating World Diabetes Day. Because all over the world, there are several barriers to care, patients, diabetes. And hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
and
we can.
Particularly in low and middle income countries like Nigeria. And I'll give you examples. In Nigeria, for instance, where we have a population of 6 to 8 million people living with diabetes, the access to care is highly limited, very, very limited. There are few diabetes specialists, I mean the specialists that we call endocrinologists, less than 200 endocrinologists to man a population of 6 to 8 million Nigerians living with diabetes is a far cry from what it's supposed to be. And most of these endocrinologists are concentrated in urban areas, in teaching hospitals, tertiary healthcare centers. So the rural areas and semi-urban areas are highly underserved. That's one of the problems. But even a more crippling problem right now is the high cost of diabetes care that has gone exponentially high beyond the reach of an average Nigerian. I'll give you an example. As at 2022 and early part of last year, a vial of insulin that used to cost about 4,000 naira has risen to 18 to 22,000 right now. Just one vial, one bottle of insulin. And this also applies to all other diabetes medications. I mean, the tablets, they supply the consumables like the glucose meters and strips and all that. So most patients in Nigeria now can no longer access care because of the high cost of care. And importantly, we also lack data. You know, there's no recent national survey to actually capture the accurate prevalence of diabetes in Nigeria and also to track the complications. So we are using projected figures from the International Diabetes Federation and then local studies by our local researchers, and that's not supposed to be. Nigeria is supposed to have a national policy on non-communicable diseases with strategic planning, and you cannot do that without having accurate data. Then another barrier to care, particularly in Nigeria, is essential medicines that are even going out of circulation because most of those drugs are imported. We have very few indigenous companies manufacturing diabetes medications. And some of those big pharma companies, you know, marketing these products are leaving the country. Some have left. And we have reliable information that a good number of them are planning to leave. So what is going to happen to the teeming population of Nigerians living with diabetes when these drugs become largely unavailable in the country? So as you can see, there are several barriers to care. One of them too is the low level of knowledge, awareness about diabetes, which is one of the things that the Diabetes Association of Nigeria, which I represent, is doing a lot to get to the nooks and crannies of this country, to create awareness about diabetes, and then break some of these cultural and religious barriers, myths, misconceptions that are making it difficult for people to access care. So these are some of the things that need to be addressed. And that is why the International Diabetes Federation, in their own wisdom, have decided to bring out the team for this year to make sure that patients have access to affordable and qualitative diabetes care. Thank you.
All right, I want you to speak again to that issue of the drugs or the medication. You said a bottle is about, is it a bottle you call it now? We used to be about 4,000. Yes. How many is needed per month?
Now, an average patient, we have different types of diabetes. So there are people who are solely on insulin, like patients who are suffering from type 1, and then some type 2 patients who are no longer responding to medication. So their life depends solely on that insulin. And just one injection, one vial of insulin is now costing between 18 to 22,000. And that patient will also be on other medications, all right? Antiplatelets, statins, some of them may be hypertensive. So the average cost of care for diabetic patients in Nigeria now is between 60 to 80,000 naira per month. How many people can afford it? What is the minimum wage? What is the unemployment rate in Nigeria? Very high. Look at the cost of inflation, the cost of food and every other thing. So it is making it very, very difficult for patients with diabetes in Nigeria to access, quality care right now. And because of that, many of them have resorted to alternative medicines, prayer houses, native doctors, and all whatnot. And you can imagine the potential consequences. What we now see in hospitals is a high prevalence of diabetes-related complications. Diabetes is a systemic illness that can affect virtually every organ in the body. So people are coming with very high blood sugar not because they don't want to live, but because they don't have money to take care of themselves. All right. So, and people are coming with kidney damage is on the high, on the high side right now because of the lack of care. And then diabetic foot ulcers leading to amputations. If you go to hospital now, a lot of diabetic patients have their legs cut off because of what? Poor quality of care. And then people are getting blind. Diabetes is one of the leading causes of blindness over the world. Stroke is now everywhere. So these are the consequences and premature deaths. Every day diabetic patients are dying in Nigeria because of poor health care. No, we as an
Well, all right, Doctor.
We have written federal minister. Hello?
Yeah, go ahead. I wanted you to land on your thoughts before I do a follow-up question.
It's all right. Thank you very much. So I wanted to say that as an advocacy group, the Diabetes Association of Nigeria, which I represent, we're not just folding our arms. All right. We are doing everything possible to bring the attention of government, Nigerian government, to this ugly situation. So in January this year, we transmitted a letter to the Federal Ministry of Health, informing them of the impending catastrophe that is befalling, the millions of Nigerians living with diabetes and pleading for an urgent action. That letter was received by the Federal Ministry of Health on February 1st this year. We are still waiting for attention, and we're doing follow-up visits. So I want to use the opportunity to plead with the Nigerian government to please treat this thing as a matter of urgency. Now, we have recommendations, suggestions that we have made to the government. For instance, I'll give you an example. HIV treatment in Nigeria is free. Treatment of tuberculosis in Nigeria is also free of charge. All right. But do you know that diabetes kills more people than HIV, tuberculosis, and even malaria combined together? Yet the cost of diabetes treatment is not even subsidized. So we are pleading with the federal government, so as a matter of urgency, to consider subsidizing diabetes care in this country. Because diabetes kills 30 to 40,000 Nigerians every year. This is worse than deaths from most other sicknesses that you can think of. So, and yet, the attention of government is not really, the government is trying, okay, but there are a lot that needs to be done. We also plead with the Nigerian government to consider total tax waiver on importation of diabetes medications and consumables. This will bring down the landing cost of these drugs, since most of them are not manufactured in Nigeria. And of course, that will translate to increased affordability of care. And then we also want this Nigerian government to set up stakeholders meeting, to set up a national diabetes strategic plan, a policy. If you go to many countries, for instance, in Egypt, once you are diagnosed to have diabetes, insulin is free. In ministry health hospitals, free insulin. All right. Nigeria has enough resources to consider this type of incentive for her citizens.
So Dr. Ugu, pardon me if I may come in there. It's a rather grim picture that you have painted about the condition of health of diabetic sufferers. And it's a good thing to also learn that you're not resting on your oars and you have, in fact, reached out to the Federal Ministry of Health. But you know, as we say, data is oxygen. So what data about, you know, the increasingly difficult conditions of diabetic sufferers and the deaths that you have quoted, what data are you also presenting to galvanize action from the Federal Ministry of Health such that these interventions that you have provided, that you have suggested, can be acted upon with immediacy?
Data are everywhere. The only thing is that the data are, you know, they are fragmented in the sense that data, they are coming from local sources from different parts of the country. I'll give you an example. I was a lead investigator to a multinational study that looked at the prevalence of diabetic foot ulcers and their outcomes in this country. It is probably one of the largest diabetic foot ulcer studies ever conducted in Nigeria. All right, the study took place in about 6 tertiary health institutions, and the outcome was an eyesore. All right, that study provided data, is online, anybody can Google it. It's called Multi-Center Evaluation of Diabetic Foot Ulcer in Nigeria, Medfund study. All right, that data provided, you know, a very ugly situation for what is happening in the country because it cuts across, like I told you, it was a multi-center study that cut across every part of this country, the 6 geopolitical zones. And the amputation rate for patients living with diabetic foot, patients who have diabetic foot, was 33.5%. So what that means is that out of every 10 persons who develop diabetic foot ulcer in Nigeria, almost 4 of them have their legs cut off. All right? And this is a far cry from what happens in developed countries. In Australia, for instance, the prevalence of amputation is 0.1%. So which means if 10 persons present with diabetic foot, less than 1 person, all right, will have his or her leg cut off. Why? Because of several factors, including this poor quality of care. So, and this study has been replicated in many other parts of the country. All right. We also have studies on mortality, death rates. All right. So if you go to hospitals now and look at their death registry, you discover that diabetes is one of the leading causes of mortality in all the hospitals across the country. So we are not lacking data. It's just that, for instance, like I said, there's a need for a national, to collate all those data into a national working plan.
Exactly. The harmonization of these data that you have quoted, you know, it is critical such that government can act. Just if you can speak to this in 30 seconds, that executive order that is meant to, remove tax from pharmaceutical products, has it kicked in, and how do you project that it will work to bring down the cost of pharmaceutical products for diabetic patients?
Yes, and if that order is implemented, it's going to help, all right? It's going to help, and like I said, it's likely going to reduce the cost of diabetes medications. However, that order has not kicked in. There is also something I want to use this opportunity to let the federal government, to bring to the knowledge of the federal government, if you don't mind. In the last 2 years or thereabout, in June 2022, there was imposition of 10 naira per liter tax on sugar-sweetened beverages, because one of the drivers of the diabetes epidemic in Nigeria and all over the world is high consumption of sugar-sweetened beverages, unhealthy diet. So the Diabetes Association of Nigeria, in collaboration with other coalition agencies, made the federal government to start deduction of 10 naira per liter tax on sugar-sweetened beverages in 2022. All right. So as to increase the cost of those drugs, of those SSBs, and then discourage people from consuming them. All right. But as I'm talking to you now, that deduction has been stopped. Has been stopped. Of course, that's an ongoing conversation, and
yes, we've captured it. We've captured it on this set before, and we'll continue, to amplify it such that action can be taken. We are totally out of time, and we must thank you very much. Dr. Ejiofor Ugu is the National President, Diabetes Association of Nigeria. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And this is where we drop the anchor on this edition of the Morning Brief today. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back again tomorrow. I am Bukola Kuka.
Sunrise Daily is up next at the top of the hour. Thank you for watching. I'm Jeff Ruzama. Bye-bye.